Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously intriguing text that attempts to build a bridge across quantum physics, social dynamics, and esoteric spirituality, all using one single underlying concept: frequency. The source text we're unpacking today is called Unite with Heaven, Resonate at the Same Frequency. And honestly, it's a fascinating read because it takes a principle you probably remember from high school physics, stretches it across the entire human experience, and then pushes it even further out into cosmic destiny.
So think about your own life for a second. Why is it that we naturally cluster with certain people, feeling instantly at ease, while we completely clash with others for seemingly no reason at all? Well, the author of our source text posits that the answer isn't just human psychology or shared interests. No, it's literal physics, specifically biological frequency. According to this philosophy, the unseen vibrations of our bodies and our minds are actually what dictate our entire social reality.
To get a handle on this, we're going to cover 5 key areas today. First, the universal law of frequency. Second, nature's biological rhythms. Third, the invisible social frequencies. Fourth, softness versus modern fragility. And finally, resonating with the universe.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the universal law of frequency. The foundational premise of this entire text relies on a very straightforward, frankly inescapable, chain reaction. Step 1, as long as there is motion in the universe, there is vibration. Step 2, where there's vibration, there's frequency. And Step 3, where there's frequency, there are underlying rules that dictate rhythm and regularity. The text argues that absolutely everything in existence is bound by this sequence. And because of that, there are strict rules governing exactly how different entities interact with one another.
And that brings us to the core rule of this whole philosophy: resonance. According to the source, things that share the same frequency naturally resonate. They mutually enhance, develop, and grow stronger together. It's like a perfect fit. Conversely, when frequencies are different, they clash, suppressing, canceling out, or literally destroying one another. The author is essentially arguing that adaptability and finding a shared frequency are the absolute keys to survival for everything, from the smallest microscopic bacteria right up to complex human beings.
Moving right along to Section 2, nature's biological rhythms.
Now check out the scale of this concept. The author lines up massive cosmic events directly alongside the intimate functions of the human body just to prove that frequency is everywhere. You have Halley's Comet visiting Earth every 76 years, the Earth orbiting the Sun every 365 days, the Moon orbiting the Earth every 29.5 days, and then zooming all the way down to adult menstruation, the migration of birds, and the steady 60 beat per minute rhythm of a resting human heart. To the author, these aren't just separate random biological or astronomical facts, they're all manifestations of the exact same universal law. So what happens when our internal rhythm totally clashes with the frequencies of our environment? Well, we feel it physically. If your biological frequency isn't suited to a high altitude, you get altitude sickness. If you rapidly cross time zones, your internal rhythm gets misaligned with the local time, and boom, jet lag. Moving from a superhuman to a dry climate, you're going to feel physical discomfort in your eyes and nose. The big takeaway here is that our bodies literally struggle and suffer the moment our internal frequency stops matching our immediate surroundings. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the invisible social frequencies.
Here's where the author takes this biological concept and makes a wild leap straight into human sociology. Why do people form cliques? According to the text, it's not conscious prejudice or even simple preference. It's a deep biological drive to seek out similar frequencies. The author notes how expats living abroad, like Chinese or Indian communities, naturally cluster together. They point out social sorting in entertainment venues, or how university students immediately bond with peers from their own home provinces. They even suggest that a Muslim might feel uneasy in a Buddhist community, or a northerner might struggle with a southern diet, entirely due to clashing biological frequencies. It's pitched as a completely unconscious mechanism.
So bottom line, interpersonal harmony is framed entirely as a matching of frequencies. Why do you click with someone? Because your frequencies are the same. Why do they dislike you? Simply because your frequency doesn't resonate with theirs. The text firmly asserts that without this hidden resonance, true harmony and peaceful coexistence are literally impossible. You just cannot force a connection if the frequencies clash.
But it's not hopeless. The author uses this beautiful symphony orchestra analogy to explain how we fix this. For a giant orchestra to play beautiful music, step 1 is that all the instruments must be deliberately tuned to the exact same pitch. Step 2, the orchestra can then play in harmony.
Step 3 applies this directly to us. To thrive within any group, you can't just be passive. You must actively tune your mind and your thinking frequency to match the collective. Basically, adaptability is an absolute requirement.
All right, on to Section 4, softness versus modern fragility.
This brings us to a really sharp critique of human resilience. Using a classic philosophical showdown, the text compares softness to hardness. Softness, think water and air, is highly adaptable to frequency changes, making it incredibly difficult to break. Hardness, on the other hand, like mountains and rocks, is rigid and stubborn. The author argues that biological entities that stubbornly stick to their own frequencies, acting like rigid rocks, are inevitably going to face destruction when their environments change. Water-like softness is pitched as the only real guarantee of survival. To test how adaptable we really are, the author throws out some absolutely extreme hypothetical scenarios. What if the sun suddenly rose in the west? What if land just became sea? What if nations, religions, and hospitals vanished overnight? What if all transport, phones, and contact with your family completely ceased? The author is directly challenging you here. If the world's frequency underwent a sudden, massive, catastrophic shift, could you handle it? Or would you shatter? And to prove just how ill-equipped we can be for change, the text shares these highly specific, honestly kind of funny anecdotes of human rigidity. Like people who refuse to eat Western food and end up with terrible upset stomachs. Or a man living abroad for 6 months who cries bitterly just because he misses home. A friend who walks around looking completely gloomy simply because he can't stand the smell of foreigners. And my personal favorite, a colleague who actually felt oppressed by the lush trees in Zimbabwe, claiming he preferred the barren, wide-open view of the Gobi Desert. These are meant to show how rigid frequencies make people utterly miserable in new environments.
Then, there's this brutal comparison between our ancient ancestors and us today. 2,000 years ago, our ancestors lived pretty comfortably, without any of our modern conveniences. But today, we complain the second the tap water stops. We curse when public transit is running late. We get incredibly irritated without our air conditioning. The author is arguing that as our lives gained all this comfort, our minds became intolerably fragile, to the point where modern people literally abandon themselves to despair over the absolute slightest careless word or bit of criticism.
This is really the emotional core of the whole argument. The warning is that we constantly confuse our emotional reactivity for sensitivity, but fragility is not softness. You have to learn to be soft and adaptable, letting things flow right over you, rather than being fragile and constantly complaining. As the author bluntly puts it, crying over the rain isn't going to change the weather, and shouting at the snow is completely useless. Softness adapts, fragility, according to the text, leads only to death.
Finally, we reach Section 5, resonating with the universe.
Now we're zooming way out from biology and making a dramatic shift into cosmology. The author states, and I quote, "We can't always expect heaven to conform to human desires. Instead, we should consider how humans can align with the will of heaven." So, the true meaning of heaven-human oneness isn't about the universe magically serving us. It's actually about humans bending their own rigid will to perfectly match the unstoppable, sweeping changes of the universe, or the Tao.
Building on that esoteric philosophy, the text then lays out a very specific spiritual action plan. It claims that the stars are awakening, and the frequency of the heavens is going to change. The author predicts that all religions are going to unify into one single belief system, and states that humanity absolutely must align with this cosmic movement. How? By adapting their consciousness and entering a specific path or organization that the text refers to as Lifechanyuan.
And maintaining our impartial lens here, it's clear the author views this cosmic alignment not as a casual suggestion, but as an incredibly urgent, non-negotiable path. The text warns that the gate to heaven is as narrow as a seam, explicitly instructing followers to follow the guide and do not look around left or right. It's a call for absolute, unwavering focus on this upcoming frequency shift.
The source leaves us with this massive, dramatic ultimatum. It explicitly compares those who fail to adjust their internal frequencies to the extinction of the dinosaurs. According to the author, a great power is coming, the cosmic frequency is shifting, and if you stubbornly remain rigid like a rock instead of becoming adaptable like water, you're simply going to be eliminated by the laws of physics. No way around it.
Whether you view this text as a quirky observation of social biology or a rigid spiritual mandate, the core question it asks about our modern resilience is definitely undeniable. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I'm going to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on regarding your own life. If the universe suddenly changed its rhythm tomorrow, are you soft enough to adapt or are you rigid enough to break? Thanks so much for exploring this wild text with me today.